Daniel Greene was the second child and first son of John and Mary Greene. Born in Warwick, Rhode Island in 1774, he was in his 22nd year when his parents and siblings came to the Northwest Territory in 1796. There is no record that he came west with his family. He was probably already at sea at the time. Daniel Greene was captain of a seagoing vessel by 1806, and a resident of Charleston, South Carolina. He made several sea voyages. Captain Daniel married Mary Strout, an English lady, while in England in 1809. His first child, Marianne, was born there the following year. By 1812, his new family is living in Charleston, South Carolina. Captain Daniel was a veteran of the War of 1812, likely as a privateer. In 1812, the United States had a very small navy. A privateer was a sea captain who used his commercial vessel for military purposes, many times to his own financial loss. Captain Daniel, his wife Mary, and their two children moved to Marietta in 1814. Captain Daniel was a larger-than-life figure. He had scars on his face, the remnants of a musket ball and a battle with a pirate. Captain Daniel purchased a house that was located on Front Street, where the Masonic Lodge is today. The house was originally built and owned by Ebenezer Sproat, the first sheriff of Washington County. The house was built from the timbers of Fort Campus Martius. Here in Marietta there's a record of Captain Daniel making several steamboat trips down the river to New Orleans. He owned a dry goods store on Ohio Street. An old newspaper advertisement records that he sold fine fabrics for garment making, blankets, gloves, and other such items. The Greenes were members of St. Luke's Episcopal Church on 2nd Street. Captain Daniel is listed as vestryman for several years. The church was built in 1856 and is much the same inside as it was then. The record states that Captain Daniel contributed $1,500 toward the building of the church, quite a large sum of money for the day. Fort Harmar was established by Congress to be built on the west side of the Muskingum River in 1785. It was built and manned supposedly to protect the Indians from the white squatters. Major Dougherty was appointed commander. He and the troops arrived in late 1785. Punishment for drunkenness was 100 lashes. Desertion was punishable by death without due process of court-martial. That meant they were shot on the spot. The pay was $3 per month. A town grew up here on this side of the river. Harmar became a separate town in 1837 and remained so until 1890. James Whitney was the first mayor. Today, the area is part of Marietta.
Sing the glory of the coming of the Lord. He is trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. He hath loosed the faithful lightning of his terrible swift sword. His truth is marching on.
James Whitney first shows up on the pages of Marietta history in 1802. Other than the date and place of his birth, Princess Anne, Maryland, in 1774, we know nothing of his early life. However, from 1802 on, we can see that James Whitney lived a full and productive life. The first seagoing vessel was built in Marietta in 1800. 2 years later, Whitney is listed as master shipbuilder for Abner Lord. Later, he would be part owner in Stone and Whitney, shipbuilders, and the companion business, a steam-generated sawmill. Whitney is listed as builder for many of the early steamboats. The year 1806 marked a momentous decision in Whitney's life. He and his fiancée, Ruth Greene, were converted to faith in Jesus Christ during the ministry of a circuit-riding preacher, Peter Cartwright. 2 years previous to this conversion, Whitney, along with other leading citizens, voluntarily provided funds to care for Jacob Young, another circuit-riding preacher. Young had become dangerously ill while ministering in Marietta, and even though there was strong opposition to Young's message of Methodism, Whitney and the others extended kindness to the young minister. Later, James Whitney and his wife Ruth would be instrumental in establishing the Methodist Church in Harmar and in Marietta. James and Ruth were married in 1807. He purchased the land for this house a year later. Whitney was appointed overseer of the poor in 1826. There was no welfare system as we know it back then. Instead, prominent businessmen were appointed as overseer of the poor. They would guarantee a person in need of funds. For example, Whitney had signed a contract guaranteeing a man with a debt that he could not pay. The man was in need of $300, which was quite a large debt for the average man. Whitney provided the funds, and the man promised to work for a year in order to repay the debt. At one point, Jonathan Haskell was overseer of the poor in Belpre. James Whitney served the community throughout his life. A list of his service at various times includes: he was board of directors of the Bank of Marietta. He was city treasurer of Marietta for several years. He was the first mayor of Harmar and also school treasurer. He owned a store and served as postmaster of Harmar for most of his life. His store was located on the southwest corner of Maple and Fort Streets, at the end of the railroad bridge. Even though a trip to Marietta from Newport took as long as a day, old letters and other records indicate that the family in Newport visited often and looked to both Captain Daniel Greene and James Whitney for advice and guidance.
In the beauty of the lilies, Christ was born across the sea, with a glory in his bosom that transfigures you and me. As he died to make men holy, let us live to make men free, while God is marching